So what is probably the best conclusion to draw? Well, the best conclusion to draw is that this interpretation of this seal is a misinterpretation. I need corroborating evidence from within that culture that they actually thought this. And of course, then when if you reach a stalemate or you want to investigate beyond, then okay, what cultures were neighbors, and did the Akkadian scientists, the Babylonian scientists, and further down the line chronologically with the Greeks and the Hebrews and all this, is there evidence that they were aware of Sumerian astronomy? Did they partake of it? Did they interact with it in anything? Do we have any texts that tell us clearly that maybe an astronomer in this culture read astronomical material from Sumer? Do we have? Well, we have lots of that stuff, and you look at all that, and what I'm saying is, look, you won't find anywhere this idea that there are 12 planets. So what you're left with is one guy writing in the 1970s who says this seal means X. This seal means we have 12 planets, as opposed to a complete absence of that idea in any material of the parent culture and the cultural and the cultures that are geographically and intellectually most closely related to it. You've got zero. You've got a huge, gaping absence of that idea. And so my conclusion is I'm going to go with the ancient people on this one. And I'm going to guess that I'm safer to land where they're telling me they're landing, what they're thinking, what I know that they thought, as opposed to just adopting this novel idea that I have no hope of validating in the primary material. And so that illustratively is again how scholars would approach something like this. When it comes to the term Anunnaki, you mentioned that, we'll go back to that. Yeah, I am saying that if you look up all the occurrences of Anunnaki and you read the text where it occurs, none of them connect on the Anunnaki with Nibiru. None of them have the Anunnaki mining gold. I mean, again, some of these fundamental ideas, even the creation stuff, where Sitchin has the Anunnaki, plural deities, creating humankind. Even that's actually wrong, because if you actually go to the text, the one that he uses is actually a Babylonian text, the creation text. Mm-hmm. The Anunnaki are in the room, but there's only one deity creating humankind. With the clay and the blood of a god and all that kind of. They're kind of like watching, but they're not doing anything. So, even something like that, he's made a leap that actually isn't in the text. And I like to think simply. Look, if you walked up to a Sumerian who knew his Sumerian Bible or his primary literature, and you said, hey, what about those Anunnaki creating humans? Wasn't that a blast? I think he'd look at you and go, well, they didn't do that. Kingu did that. Didn't you read it? Did you fail like Sumerian or something? Sumerian lit class or we have a lot of this material, and I just think that we're better off doing our best to let them inform us. It's not a perfect science. It doesn't always work. It doesn't answer every question. But one thing it does do is it weeds out ideas, or at least it exposes ideas as to having no basis at all within, again, the intellectual inheritance of that civilization.
So I think along those lines of letting the text interpret itself, that might be a phrase I got from one of your interviews, actually. Possibly not. I think my last question is sent in by a listener to the podcast, Dustin. He had the observation that Sitchin's ideas really seemed kind of very specific to his time, to the 1970s. Sort of like Barney and Betty Hill, that UFO case. Like, they used language and they used terms like Betty got a book from the aliens that was very specific to that time. And another example is one that you've been talking about is the 12 planets, where when Sitchin was writing, well, we had 9 planets, plus you had the sun and the moon would be 10, plus you have this Nibiru is planet X. So that's how you get 12. But as you just said, well, actually, they didn't know about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, or even asteroids. So I'm curious if there are any other obvious examples of Sitchin sort of writing for his time as opposed to how the Sumerians would have thought about this stuff.
Well, I think probably an obvious one is the whole importation of nuclear warfare into the Sumerian texts. And it's not just Sumerian, but it's other ancient texts that Sitchin in some of his books will have. This idea of interplanetary conflict and conflict between alien deities and involving, again, nuclear capabilities. To me, that is right out of the 70s, the Cold War kind of hermeneutic that, frankly, again, this will irritate some Christian listeners, but you'll read that in prophecy books too, about prophetic interpretation. I remember in the 70s when the Antichrist was had something to do with the Russians, and now it's the Muslims, and I mean we tend to have this sort of Cold War hermeneutic, and then it's whoever the political enemy of the time hermeneutic that we use to filter and inform our interpretation of the Bible. Well, I think there are hints of that in what Sitchin does. And the nuclear thing is to me pretty obvious. You get a lot of this in other ancient alien sort of theorists, people who want to marry the ancient alien idea to modern visitation. It's always this sort of ecologically motivated, save the planet, free energy kind of stuff. I mean, you can see, again, these current ideas that sort of find homes in this narrative. So, yeah, I think your observation is a good one.
Well, that's actually about it that I had. We talked about a couple of the things I was going to ask you, like what are the strongest textual lines of evidence, but it sounds like there really aren't any textual lines of evidence. He basically took the terms and did what he wanted.
Yeah, the only thing he has is he has the characters, the deity names, and he has, again, these. He's got the characters. He'll take something like. So here's another one. Another thing that comes out of the 70s is Velikovskyan views of catastrophism that, again, were current at the time, and Sitchin imports them into some of the mythological epics of Sumer, so that when two gods are battling and one kills off another one, well, that must be this planetary body colliding with another planetary body, and then we have the results, that sort of thing. So you get Velikovskyan catastrophism in there too, but he has a lot of fodder. We have these stories, we have these mythological epics, we've got the cast of characters, we've got the names and the places and all that sort of thing, and again, your analogy of
Wizard of Oz,
the Great and Powerful, is actually I think a pretty good one, for what's going on.
Yeah, I thought it was a good movie, but it's like this doesn't really have much to do with the books. Special effects were good.
There's that. And then you don't have enough living zealots, like when with the Marvel remakes, when somebody steps out of line with what's in the comic book history for a character, people just have a cow. You don't have the L. Frank Baum Society or something clamoring for accuracy.
Yeah, well, I had that issue with the 2009 Star Trek movie when they destroyed Vulcan, and I was, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting slightly off topic. But,
yeah. No, but I understand it completely.
Yeah. Well, so I guess I'll ask, is there anything else important to this discussion that you think we've left out?
Well, I would encourage people to watch the Ancient Aliens Debunked documentary, of course, along with, you should have a link to, some of your past shows, the archive there. But definitely the documentary. There are a lot of things it doesn't cover, but it's 3 hours and it's free. A lot of things it doesn't cover, but what it does cover, I think it does a pretty good job, of showing that, you're really, really getting a lot of disinformation from ancient aliens.
And, of course, the theme throughout all of this, I think, bears re-emphasizing, is that this is really don't take our word for it, don't take their word for it. Go to the primary sources. Go actually look at the objective data for this kind of stuff and see what happens. I mean, see what the translations actually say for this stuff. And as I said, I'll link up to your various websites, especially for this episode, the sitchiniswrong.com site. And as you said, it has the video of you going to these translation sites and typing in the term and saying, hey, look, what Sitchin said is wrong. Or it's
I don't know what else I could do.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even wrong. It doesn't exist. He literally made up a lot of it. And I think that's an issue that a lot of people who are Sitchinites don't seem to understand when they want to converse with you. It's not okay, let's quibble about this point. It's show me where even a smidgen of his idea has anything to do with the original text.
Yeah, I just want people to look. It's not exciting, but it's better than me just lecturing to you. Just go look.
Yeah. So I guess with that said, I will say thank you. You've been very generous with your time. An hour and a half total in this episode and the last, because we're breaking them up. It's amazing what you can do in post-processing. All right. I guess I'll thank you again, and I will say shalom.
Yep. Thank you. Shalom.